Hello and welcome to I Can Relate. I'm Jessica Burns. This podcast takes us on people's journeys through personal and sometimes sensitive experiences. These are usually topics that are not spoken about, and the hope here is that by bringing them to light, it'll help others feel less alone in what they're going through. I look forward to embarking on this journey with you as we develop a greater understanding and empathy for one another. Pramit can break his life into two parts: life with his vision and life without. He took a prescribed medication for joint pains and almost overnight lost his sight. He shares with us his journey of losing his confidence and not being able to leave the house for 2 years. He describes how far he has come and how he feels at peace and content. He has gone on to develop a voice control app to help the visually impaired maintain their independence. Pramit's story provides an insight into what it's like to live in a world you can no longer see. Hello, Pramit, and welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, Jessica. Good morning.
Good morning and good evening. You're calling from India. It's 8:30 p.m. your time, right?
No, it's 6 p.m. actually. It's not so bad.
Oh, good. Okay. Where are you in India?
I'm near Delhi. It's a suburban town of Delhi. It's actually more like a tech hub, multinational hub. So
Okay.
it's far more vibrant than Delhi.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for making the time, and I really appreciate you coming on today. Would you share your story with us? You have not always been visually impaired.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, almost like I can break up my life in two parts. Uh, First part completely as a person with normal vision, the other one with as a visually impaired. And as a somebody with a normal vision, I had the usual dreams of getting good education, getting good job, buying a car, and all the material things in life, going up the
Yeah.
corporate ladder. So those were my plans, and I sort of stuck to it in a very focused way. So I'm a computer engineer who then did an MBA from India's top institutes. I worked with global companies like Unilever, Motorola, Quest Diagnostics, and well, I was charged up to go up the corporate ladder. That's all what my focus was, to the detriment of my health, and even I don't think I spent much time with the family. So that's the way that part of the life was. And about 20 years back, it was a reaction of a drug, a freakish reaction, which impacted my retina. Literally overnight, my vision had dropped quite a bit. I could still get some correction, so I continued working. And yet, over the years, my vision kept on dropping. And about 8, 9 years back, I realized now I cannot read anything at all. My vision was still dropping very fast, and I was just lost, and I was in what I call a lost phase, where I had lost confidence. There were all these devils going through my mind, and I was just sitting at home for 2, 3 years doing nothing. uh, just that there was no confidence in that I had. And then I slowly got out of it. So that's broadly what my story is, Jessica.
Wow. You say there were devils going through your mind. Would you share what those were?
Okay. So, what I have seen, I mean, this is now, I'm talking, sounding wiser, but that time you don't realize it. So I think what was happening is, like I said, the confidence was just not there. And the reason was because I was trying to live in the past. So I would, just close my eyes, and I'll try and, put myself in the shoe of what I used to do earlier. And suddenly I'll get a fright of my life. I'll say, oh, I won't be able to do PowerPoint, Excel sheet. And by the way, at that time I was also, just starting with accessibility apps. So starting with the screen reader, so just struggling to learn it. So one was, I think, completely living in the past, and that was one. And I think secondly, what happens is that when you let the fear grip you, when fear takes you over, I think then the mind runs wild. And then it could get you into, oh, what, this can happen, that can happen, I can't do this, can't do that, so you just sort of so when I say sitting at home lost, it was sort of almost like a paralysis, not in a physical sense but in a more mental sense, that you're just bogged down and not willing to come out of it. So it's like a quicksand, or call it whatever. So that's what really was going in my mind.
Would you explain what kind of drug it was that you took that you lost your vision?
Yeah, sure. So it was a fairly common drug. So in my case, I had these joint pains, and it was very, very painful. And doctors could not diagnose it. And what happens is, in such rheumatic cases where it's not diagnosed, it's a global practice to put the patient on what is called chloroquine or hydrochloroquine, which is a very common drug for malaria. And the patient is asked to take it, for a longish period. And it was, I would still say, a very freakish case, because it's known to impact people. And this is all again, being a wiser now, I'm talking about. So in 2-3% cases, it might impact the retina. And well, it just happened in my case out of the blue, because the dose that I had taken was very, very nominal.
And I remember you and I speaking before. Did you say the drug is it's still being used and in some cases for coronavirus?
Well, there were some big names which are propagating the use, presidents and prime ministers. But fortunately, I think, because I really wanted to tell the world, don't use this. It's going to, because people were being asked to pop it in as a, as a sort of uh, a preventive cure for corona. But fortunately, I don't think it's being practiced now. So I
Okay.
think that's good for the world.
Yes, definitely. And would you explain or tell us the name of the drug?
Yeah, it's called chloroquine or hydrochloroquine, and
Okay.
it's typically used for malaria.
Wow. And you've said other people have experienced the sight loss as well. I think you said 2 to 3% lose vision.
Yes, that's correct. So I had know of at least two cases. A lady I just met couple of months back, exactly the same case. Exactly the same joint pains. Given this, impacted the retina. There was another person I know of whose hearing got impaired because of this. So I think it's known to have either impact on hearing or on retina.
No. And
Only in certain cases.
do you think this drug should still be allowed in the market?
See, it's quite a boon for areas where malaria is. So, if you see most of the Western world, malaria is not there. I think it's still prevalent in Africa, for example, right? So, there's no harm if it's taken, while you are having malaria for 10 days, there is no harm at all. But when it's taken over a long period, like, for example, I took it over 2 years, one tablet a day. I think that's when it causes a problem, because what doctors told me later is the body is not able to secrete it out, so it remains in the body, and it figures out some way of reaching the retina and impacting it. So I had those, even when I was detected, I had those classic symptoms of what is called macular degeneration. So there's something called bullseye, which is a classic case, and that had already got formed by the time it got detected.
Wow. And I know you probably get this question a lot, so I hope you don't mind me asking, but how
No, no.
much how
Yeah.
much can you see? Like, can you notice the difference between night and day?
Yeah, I can. So the way my vision is, because see what happened, it's not a classic case. So it's not exactly macular degeneration. I've got pigments also. I got huge problem adjusting to change of light, color blindness. So all kind of things rolled into one. So today, where my vision is, I cannot read anything at all. Even if somebody is very close to me, I can't make out their features, etc., unless they speak. So just next time, if you're going to speak, I will immediately recognize you, but not the other way around.
Yeah.
And what happens is, if there is good amount of light, then yes, I have some very basic gross vision, I would say. So I can make out there is a car, I can make out there's a person. Often don't make out, and I think I mentioned that I therefore fractured my finger also, because
Oh
I
my
didn't
gosh.
notice the corner of a furniture. No, so
Oh,
so all that happens, and it all only happens because of overconfidence, by the way. So
yeah.
because so it's sort of in the sense, as because I saw my vision drop over like last 20 years. So I think you just take it in your stride, and I mean that's the only option, honestly, because there's no point in thinking back and saying, "Oh, I was so better off the earlier." There's no point. You got to just adjust to the new reality and figure out tools, techniques. Make up your mind in a certain way, and you just have to move on. I don't think there is any point in thinking about the past, which is what I was doing earlier. And I told you the story of that lost phase.
Yeah. And did you feel like you had the support from family and friends to get through this?
See, the support is there, but let me tell you what happens, and this is the funny thing. So even after so many years, now imagine 20 years, my wife is still doesn't know what I see and what I don't. So often there are cases when something is 6 inches away, and she's saying it's there, and I say, no, I can't see it at all. And there are times when something she would probably think, because sometimes there is a contrast or there's a flash of light on it, so suddenly I know there's something different there, right? So I think what happens is that they cannot therefore figure out what you can see and what you cannot. And number two, I mean, my belief is looking at my experience, because uh, the I may not see the vision, but then how I process it is in the mind. So I still feel that the challenges are more in the mind than the physical challenge of not being able to see. How you deal with it. So imagine, for another person it's extremely difficult to know that, look, what's running through in your mind, right? How positively or otherwise you are taking that as as a challenge, or what are you thinking or doing about it. So yes, you do get help, but sometimes a lot of that help, what I realize is, doesn't really help you, in the sense that you want to be independent, you want to be in charge of things. And often the help is made to oh, you keep sitting, I'll get it for you, right? When that's not the idea, right? The idea is, okay, can I figure out a way of doing it myself in a controlled way. So I think these are challenges that the family and the friends also have to slowly adjust to.
Yeah. How much is too much help for them and getting used to that?
Yes.
Okay.
And they keep getting surprised all the time, and like I said, because they can't really understand what is going through the other person's mind. It's very,
Mhm.
very difficult, actually, for honestly, for anybody.
Yeah. And do you feel like you can like openly communicate with them your frustrations when they do help you too much?
Yeah, so, so I try to, in the sense, at least all my family, my friends, the closer group, they know that, okay, this guy, don't hold his hands. So for example, people would let's say if there are steps coming, there's a staircase, so they might want to hold my hands, which I say, no, 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 I'll manage. Just sort of just tell me if there is a sudden step going down, because that's dangerous, right? So there are stuff like that, and I think they slowly get used to. I think they also, I think, after a while, figure out, okay, this guy is wanting to do things on his own, and he's wanting to be independent. So I think so accordingly they also adjust as to the kind of help that I need.
And that actually, I think it's an important note for, and maybe it might be different for you than other people who are visually impaired, but I had always wondered, so I live normally in London, and I do see people who are visually impaired trying to get onto the underground, which is just not friendly at all for anyone, with all the stairs. Would you advise against trying to help someone and just ask them first instead of thinking, oh, let me grab their arm, help them down the stairs, help them on to the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'll give you my example. So in India, there were about 3 weeks when there was absolutely no Uber running on the roads. So, and I was going to Delhi, and therefore the only way I had to use the metro, right? And India, the stations are exactly the same. So some of them are either overhead or some of them are underground. So you still have to take a lot of steps, and then within that figure out. And there are multiple lines sometimes, going. So now I can tell you my experience was that whenever I needed help, I will ask somebody, and often it would be, I may ask somebody, okay, where will I find this metro? And somebody will point in a certain direction and say that way, right? So then I have to tell them, no, 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 please, either just direct me towards that side. And then there will be people who'll say, okay, why don't you sort of follow me or whatever, I'm going in that direction. But you're right, if somebody just comes and holds your hand and say, okay, I'll get you there. And I don't think a lot of visually impaired people like that. They would often prefer that, please ask me. I mean, I would like to seek your help, but please ask me, as to what kind of help. Maybe not the
Absolutely.
kind of help, like I said, because they really don't know what I'm seeing. And a stranger, there is no way a stranger would know what
Yeah.
I'm seeing or what is going through my mind. So,
Yeah.
but asking for help. I mean, these are all personal experiences, right? I can't talk on behalf of the community, but asking for help is, I think, not at all a bad idea. I do that all the time. Though I have friends, I know people visually impaired who don't want to ask for help. So there are people of that, of that nature as well.
Yeah,
So I think everybody works out their own formula.
for sure. And do you use a cane to get around?
Okay, not so far. Again, that's to my mind is, I think it's again, something in the mind.
Okay.
If you ask me physically, is there a physical need for a cane? There is, for sure, because I keep taking a tumble here and there, so because I might miss a step or,
Yeah.
but it's again, the problem is all in the mind. So in my mind, for me, cane is like, maybe taking, my level, one level down. Though I know I need it physically, a lot of people have tried to teach me how to use the cane. But somewhere the attitude is, no, 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 let me try and manage as long as I can manage without a cane. I don't know whether it's wise or no. It may be very, very stupid. And I'll probably come to know a few years down the line when I would be wiser and, but right now, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. So when you started to lose your vision, did you do any sort of training, like you said, with getting around? So building sidewalks in your own home.
Actually, nothing. And the reason I'll tell you in my case is actually a very, very, different one. And the reason why I say so, because see, there are, I would say, a good percentage of visually impaired people who have, sort of early in life lost their vision. So what happens typically, that's the time when they're open to seek help, open to find out new technologies, make their houses friendly for a visually impaired and so on. In my case, what happened, because it, like I said, it happened over a period of 20 years, and I just kept on adjusting marginally. So there were these marginal adjustments which I kept doing. So I just sort of just been moving along, discovering things, figuring out, adjusting to them completely on my own. So the same way in at house also, I have figured out ways of moving around or doing my own stuff.
Would you explain the app that you started, which has helped you and transformed your experience?
Yeah, sure. So like all of these baggage of the experience, and like I said, after this lost phase, I started doing consulting, and then generally, just out of the blue, a few events happened, and that get me on to building this app, which is called Louis Voice Control, and which will allow a user to just completely control all their popular apps, the phone functions, just by voice commands. And in a way, building of this app, I'm just trying to solve my own problem in the hope that it might work for other visually impaired friends as well.
Yes. And so the app you said is better than Siri. It's more adapted for the visually impaired. And what it does is it reads out what you can see on different applications, right? Like things like Uber.
Correct. Yes. So Alexa, Google, Siri, I think they're all doing wonderful work. But I think if you talk specifically the need of a visually impaired, of a blind person, I think Louis voice control will probably, is very different. And therefore, in that context, it does a better job. And there are three big differences, if I may just talk about it. So one is that whichever app that Louis voice control supports, each and everything in that app can be done by just voice commands. In comparison, the voice assistants will allow only very superficial two or three things to be done within an app. Now, to be able to do end to end, for example, if you have to do Uber booking, for example, end to end, the app needs to be constantly interacting with the user. So there has to be a continuous two-way interaction. Now, this is something again doesn't happen with the voice assistants. So we give them a command, they do something, and then they go silent. And thirdly, every time a voice assistant is given a command in Alexa or Siri, it will always start from scratch, from the same position in the beginning. Louis can actually just, if a user just brings up Louis on any screen of the app, it automatically figures out where the user is and just starts from there. So there are very, very fundamental differences in the way Louis is designed. And like I said, it's basically the idea is that a blind person who cannot see the screen should be able to use the phone as effectively as any sighted person, but with just voice commands.
I think that's so fantastic. And I love that when you and I were speaking before, you said the way you like came up with like the name, I guess. Would you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that experience is something I can never forget. I had gone to meet a friend, and he took my smartphone and he said, "Why don't I book Uber for you?" And I gave him my destination. He told me the three, four options that Uber was showing. I told him which one to pick. Similarly, he told me the rides available, the fare, how much time it will take. I said, okay, pick up this one. He confirmed how I'm going to make the payment. And then he just, reconfirmed everything, booked the Uber for me, and even called up the driver. And I spoke to the driver. And on the way back in Uber, I realized this was some experience. And this, the thought just came in a flash. How about, building a virtual friend right there on the phone screen, which can do exactly this? And the great thing about that experience was I was in control all along. Like I just mentioned, Jess, in the beginning, uh, I wanted to be independent and I wanted to be in control. So, here there was a case where somebody was clearly helping me, but then I was the one in charge. I was the one taking the decision. So I just didn't feel uncomfortable at all. And this is exactly how, Louis is built to work in exactly the same fashion that my friend was trying to do.
I think that's so wonderful and that it's helped your independence. Question for you, a bit of change of pace. How have your buying habits changed? For example, how do you shop for clothes and groceries?
Okay, this is very, very interesting. So I'll tell you groceries first, right? So now anyway, last I think what 4 5 years I've completely moved online, right? Because it's a pain going to a supermarket and then figuring out what is where and then putting it in your basket and then getting it built and all that. So all that is a pain. So I used to do that, because earlier there was no option, but last 5 years, now each and everything in the at home is, I think 99% is all through online ordering, and online ordering makes it easy. And yes, I mean, with people like Amazon, and there is a Flipkart in India, so they all have the return policy as well. So because clothes, you can, at best read the reviews, you can't feel it. So I think now it's very comfortable. Had the online option not been there, then it does get a bit difficult. But I must tell you how I select fruits and vegetables, because that's something very interesting, and I found nobody else does it. So most people with vision, I think, take a look at the fruit and the vegetable, right?
Yeah.
And I think they figure out from the look only, is it fresh or not. I have to touch it actually, but
Yeah.
by just touching it or by smelling it, I can figure out is it fresh or not. So I don't know, my style is very, very different, but I am actually, I do a reasonably good task of it.
Well, Pramit, I got to tell you, I've got my vision and I would be right there with you. Not so much the smelling, but I go around touching it as well.
Often somebody will tell me, why are you touching it? It's of course fresh. I say, no, 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 I got to feel it. That's the only way.
Of course, I'm the same with like avocados. um, so one question I'm curious about, um, your place where you live in India, do you feel comfortable going on holiday somewhere else, or do you feel like you've mentally mapped out where you are because you lived there perhaps before you lost your sight? Do you feel you're comfortable there, or would you feel ever comfortable going on holiday?
See, I'm comfortable either way. And I think, you asked me, actually, I'll give you a deeper response to it, because over the years, I had mentioned that I have also got into meditation and spirituality. And, I spoke about, that whole thing of running and trying to go up the corporate ladder.
Yes.
And I think overall, if I look at my life and in the last 7 8 years, so one part is the all the challenges with vision and slowly coming out of it and getting on to building this app. But more critically in my mind, I've been now trying to change my life in 2 3 different ways. One is I think overall there is a far more feeling of content with whatever is wherever I am. So even in that lost phase, somewhere in my mind I was contented. I knew that this will pass away. So therefore, when you ask me whether I am comfortable here or going on travel, I'm trying to be content both ways. So if I don't go on travel, like 9 months 10 months, none of us have traveled probably, right? I'm okay with that. And if I get a chance to travel alone or with somebody, I'm okay with that as well. And I think overall with life, I think I have sort of since I'm no longer trying to run after material part of life. And I think more and more I'm trying to focus my life on being less selfish about things, which I was very extremely selfish, being far less transactional, what is in it for me kind of a thing on for everything, and hopefully being able to serve others without necessarily getting anything in return. So these are some of the objectives that I have. So so I don't know whether I answered your question
No, you
exactly.
definitely did. And you actually unlocked another question for me. When it comes to spirituality, do you feel you've reached new heights because you've lost your vision?
I think see, it's very difficult to say because almost 15 years back, all of a sudden, and this was the time when I was actually doing well with my career, my vision was still sort of okay. It wasn't that bad. I could still see, read, in fact, even the newspaper, which is a very fine print. And suddenly all these I would say questions started coming to my mind. What am I doing? Where am I running? Am I happy? What on the earth am I on earth for? What am I doing here? So all these questions started coming, and it just happened probably as a coincidence. So maybe you're right that around the time I was in that lost phase, my vision was dropping, was also the time when I got exposed to spirituality. I got into meditation. And yes, I think both the things happened together. Now whether one but I don't think it happened because of my loss of vision, because that questions and that mind was already changing fast. But yeah, I can tell you one other very interesting thing, Jess, is that see, during the time I had vision, I actually was so busy running after material things in life that I was not even reading at all. And at that time I could read, but suddenly in that phase I realized that I wanted to read. And somebody just exposed me to audiobooks. I had no idea that audiobooks existed. And somebody just gave me on a USB stick an audiobook and said, read this and tell me how you like it. And I just loved it. So audiobooks have actually just opened a new world for me, and this is what then got me headlong into spirituality, and it just opened up a new world for me. That's the best way to put it.
I think that's so fantastic. And now, do you listen? Because I know you said you listen to podcasts as well. How do you find, how did you find this podcast, for example?
Oh, okay. So this podcast was bit of a, the work that I needed to do for the app. So obviously, so there are, like, for example, I use an app Podbean for podcasts. So I was searching there, I was Googling around, I was looking for good podcasts. That's how I came across yours. But yes, in a different way, today I am actually a voracious, I wouldn't say reader, a hearer of books, audiobooks. I read lots and lots of books, lots of podcasts, even ebooks. I convert them into audio and then listen to them in audio form. So yes, the life is now today, everything is about more hearing. And so that faculty has gone up. And by the way, I must also tell you, so whatever I hear, it just goes and gets stored in the mind. A lot of people tell me that audiobooks make them sleepy. It makes me very, very alert. And I just grasp everything, whatever I hear. And that faculty has, I think, has just improved as the vision got went down.
Interesting. So, okay. So, in your mind, you feel like you're able to visualize the story so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. I love YouTube videos also, though I can't see the screen, but I can well visualize it, so I quite enjoy them.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So, do you, when you dream, when you go to sleep at night, do you still see in your dreams?
Yeah, yeah. So my visions are absolutely crystal clear. In fact, a lot of times I'll tell you, a lot of times my dreams, I get up in the morning and I say, was it really, because I'm like, there are some dreams where I'm seeing 5 miles away, let's say, as an example, and I
Yeah.
can see clearly. I can see the sharp features, or I am playing something and I can see the ball coming exactly, moving by a millimeter. I can see that. And then morning I get up and I say, oh boy, that was something, and sometimes then I question it, I mean, was I really, clear seeing that clearly in my dreams? Maybe at one point in time I used to, but now I've forgotten actually.
Yeah. Have you found a community that you've been able to connect with and become a part of?
I've actually not tried to be a part of a specific community. And I'll tell you why. One of the things I realized is that I see a lot of people, being, sort of identifying themselves as a visually impaired,
Mm.
and therefore having a circle of visually impaired friends around them. The whole life is around, I am visually impaired. And I've deliberately not got into that because I just felt that maybe for me it may be a trap, because I don't want to be identified as visually impaired. I mean, that's not my identity, because I am, somebody, I have certain other talent or whatever. All right. So that's the reason I have sort of, I keep in touch, but I don't identify myself as being a part of a specific community.
For sure. And you said that's not how you identify yourself. How do you want to be remembered? How do you identify yourself?
That's a tough one. Certainly not as a visually impaired. Certainly no. Right. So if you ask me now in the current context, I want people to know that there is this app that I'm building, and hopefully, while yes, the visually impaired story does come here, but I think it's more about solving my own problem and hoping that it can work for others. So in a way, there is a strong service social element here as well. I think more importantly, I would like to people to know who I am, as a person, right? Not to worry about my visual impairment, and just in terms of what I bring to the table, what are my good points, bad points, whatever, more as a person. That's all I would say. I think nothing special, but not certainly not, oh, this guy is visually impaired and that's all my identity is. That shouldn't it be?
Hmm. No, absolutely. So you said some people are into, I think you were talking about activities. Um,
Yeah.
what activities do you like to do?
Yeah, no, so I actually have a pretty hectic day. So I get up early in the morning at 5, and typically my day will start with meditation. And that's something, which really allows me to connect with myself and with the, hopefully with the higher powers. But that really is useful because it really, the day starts off very well, and the mind is more settled. And in fact, I tend to get a lot of creative ideas in the morning around this time. And so typically I do meditation, and then I try and do some intense exercise as well. And during the day I keep myself very active. Breakfasts are typically, so I give myself about an hour or so, because I get up early, so I have that leisure of time. So I will typically sit in the garden, have a leisurely breakfast, listen to podcasts of all kinds. So there'll be business news, BBC news, Wall Street Journal, tech news, and so on. So, and then even some spiritual podcasts, or a podcast like yours, where something very interesting. And then during the day I keep listening to audiobooks or YouTube or whatever, and I keep myself active over the weekend, meeting friends. So I've been, I've got a small group now. We try and meet over the weekend. But so the exercise is the only part where I have to be, in the sense it has to be in a room. I would have loved to be more outdoors, etc. So that I try and avoid, because sometimes I bang against things, and and or there is an oncoming vehicle or something, so that I nowadays avoid.
Interesting. So would you say it's better for someone who's visually impaired to live in a city versus the countryside?
No, I won't say that actually, because see, in a way, countryside will have its own benefit. Now, I can only give you my personal example. So, typically, what I've seen, smaller towns and villages, people have time for each other. Unfortunately, in the city, they don't have. Everybody is running, right? So there are pros and cons of both. I think city will have more facility, more things are organized. But like I said, at the same time, how many people are really interested in you? In smaller towns, maybe the facilities are less, but there is probably a lot more to do and more people to interact with and learn. So I think it works both ways. And now with everything working from home and with the internet practically being everywhere, I think there are times when I think, why should I be sitting here? I should be maybe sitting in the Himalayas in a nice hill station and working from there in, some wonderful air and weather.
Yeah, I understand that. Living in London, I get that. So, what would you like people to know about those who are visually impaired?
Is that, see, one, it's very important to understand that every visually impaired person is just the same person. It's just that their vision, for whatever reason, has dropped. So they have the same aspirations, and sometimes I think that's very, very, very important for everybody to realize that a visually impaired person has the same aspirations. Number two, and this is a mistake I also used to make, because like I told you, my first half of my life was somebody with a normal vision. So what happens, we tend to build these stereotypes, and I had built these stereotypes as a sighted person. So when you see a visually impaired, you have these stereotypes. Oh, this guy cannot see, therefore XYZ, it is like that. And trust me, every visually impaired is different, just like every sighted person is. So therefore, there is no point in having stereotypes. Just to get to know them at an individual level, and you'll see that. And like was giving you my example. So one faculty goes down, something else goes up. We have three more visually impaired people in the team, and I interact with so many. I can tell you, there are people. Some people are absolutely brilliant. I mean, they may not have the vision. I have one lady who has absolutely zero vision. Another can see only the colors, but they are so creative. I can't tell you. The entire user experience of Louis voice control is actually done by them. So there are other strengths, and so therefore don't stereotype anybody, is what my suggestion would be, because I used to make the same mistake.
Wow, I think that's really powerful and important to remember. So what advice would you give to someone who's recently lost their vision, or their vision's rapidly declining like you experienced?
So my experience, like I said, it's a, see, number one, being shaken up. I think it's a very natural reaction of the body and the mind, right? And there is nothing wrong with that. So there's nothing wrong with feeling, oh, why am I being, so shaken up? I think it's something natural. Number two, like I shared with my experiences, that don't live in the past. I think that's very important. So we sometimes, it's just good to accept the reality, and just try and then see, okay, how do I adjust to it best? What are the ways? What is it that I really want to do next? Ask yourself these kind of questions. It helps. Third, Jessica, which I didn't talk about, but I think it played an important role, is sometimes you would get gripped with fear, and it happens to all of us. I mean, nothing to do with visually impaired, it can happen to any of us. And when you're gripped with fear, somebody taught me this. He said, look, there are two ways of going about it. See, one is that we try and sometimes forget that fear. So I may get into drugs, I may get into drinking, or try and move away from fear. Another way which I do now is to look into the fear, right into the eye, and ask yourself a question. Okay, what is the worst that can happen to me? So I did that, Jessica, 8 9 years back, when I was going through this. I tried to define what is the worst that can happen to me. And would you believe it, that that worst definition was actually pretty good. So once I defined it, I said, oh boy, this is not bad at all, I can live with it. So suddenly that fear vanished. So today also, I may get gripped with fear, but it doesn't last for more than a few hours, because I just ask myself the same question. And so more often than not, that worst is something which is not so bad at all. So then there is no need to be afraid. Then you can just move on with life.
I think that's a great lesson for us all to learn. That's actually something I do as well, is I tell myself, okay, what's the worst can happen? But then sometimes when I actually think of the worst thing, I'm like, oh my God, that actually was a really bad idea, because something worse could happen. Pramit, thank you so much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you, Jessica. An honor to be here.
You've been listening to I Can Relate. If you'd like to hear more of these episodes, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can do this on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or any other platform you're listening on. To become a part of the community, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Join me next time for another episode Thanks for listening.